What if we told you that India is under attack right now, not by missiles, but by malware? That the war is silent, digital, and dangerously invisible. China's cyber espionage isn't fiction anymore. It's clear and present threat. The question is, are we prepared? Welcome, friends. Welcome to another gripping episode of Global Focus, where we go beyond the headlines to decode the truth behind India's most pressing national and strategic challenges. Today, we are diving deep into the alarming subject that rarely gets the attention it deserves. China's rising cyber warfare tactics against India, from power grid sabotage to massive data breaches and silent surveillance of strategic assets. Cyber attacks have become the newest weapon in geopolitical warfare. To help us understand the scope, intent, and strategic implications of this silent war, we are joined by a very special guest, Dr. Adityanjee, President of the Council for Strategic Affairs, a leading voice in strategic policy and national security. Dr. Adityanjee brings decades of experience in global geopolitics, cyber warfare strategy, and India's evolving defense posture. Dr. Adityanjee, it's an honor to have you with us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mr. Sinha, for inviting me again on Global Focus for a very contemporary threat and very serious national security challenge for India. I'm pleased to be here.
Yes, sir. Yes. So, my the very first question to you: how vulnerable is India to China's growing cyber espionage capability?
The vulnerability is there. One should not deny it because if you deny the vulnerability, you will not take corrective actions. You mentioned some cyber attacks.
Yeah.
They're nothing new. They've been going on for a while. There have been multiple cyber attack on India, its critical infrastructure, its commercial entities, and other entities. I'll use two or three illustrative examples to highlight. Okay, this is 2025. Let's go back to 2006 and evaluate an incident. There was a test of a version of Agni missile, and that test failed. And we are talking about 2006. Later on, it was speculated, it has never been revealed what was the reason for test failure, that test launch was compromised by a malware called Stuxnet worm.
I see.
No one claimed responsibility, and no one has claimed responsibility as to who created the Stuxnet worm.
Yeah.
But there are speculations that two governments may have worked in conjunction, in collaboration, and used the Stuxnet malware to cripple the nuclear enrichment program of Iran and North Korea. So I'm going that far back, different government, different set of circumstances. Nobody took responsibility. It is speculated that the Agni missile launch was used as a test case to test the bomb. For your viewers, I'm not a cybersecurity expert. I am just a generalist who observes the geopolitical events and tries to connect the dots. So we are going back as far as 2006.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about 2022. There's a prestigious medical institution in New Delhi called All India Institute of Medical Sciences.
Yeah, right.
And that's my alma mater. I went to medical school there. In 2022, for 2 weeks, AIIMS's e-health applications were compromised, were shut down basically. 5 servers of AIIMS were attacked by some sort of malware, ransom malware. For 2 weeks, the systems were down, causing a lot of inconvenience to patients. Luckily, AIIMS had some back servers which they were able to retrieve the data. Interesting thing, the attack group, the hackers, they demanded 200 crore rupees from All India Institute of Medical Sciences, that is equivalent to around $25 million. I don't think AIIMS paid that money to the hackers. They had backup servers, so they were able to do that. Again, question comes, who made that cyber attack? A large prestigious institution like All India Institute of Medical Sciences. Why it was not ready for this kind of thing? Nobody thought that maybe a hospital can be targeted. But that makes us think very critically. Why hospital? You have millions of patients getting treatment. You can get patient data, sensitive patient data. A lot of politicians and VIPs go to that hospital. Their medical records are kept. Sometimes top national office holders go there, like President of India. So you understand why the cyber attack on All India Institute of Medical Sciences. I'm highlighting these incidents to tell you that any networked organization which is in a network environment is a target. And unfortunately, these examples illustrate the vulnerabilities and lack of preparedness when we transition from paper environment to network environment. Nobody thinks about these things. Now, these two are not the only ones. Mumbai power grid was attacked. Ladakh power grid was attacked. During COVID time, there were 2 companies that were manufacturing vaccines for India. One was Bharat Biotech, and the second was Serum Institute of India. And again, it is speculated, alleged that the attackers from Chinese hackers groups. Chinese government denied, but ostensible motive was to steal proprietary information, intellectual property, because India's vaccines were being promoted in 183 countries.
Right.
And China's Sinopharm vaccine was there only in 80 countries, and it was found to be inferior. So Chinese are very good at stealing intellectual property and proprietary information. There have been other attacks on, media organizations like Bennett Coleman and Company, on India's unique ID system, Uday. If you hack that entity, you get information of all the citizens of India that have Aadhaar card. Madhya Pradesh Police, India's National Security Council, Ministry of External Affairs, Indian embassies, and random phishing campaigns. At least more than 24 attacks have been attributed to Chinese cyber attacks. There have been attempts by Pakistani hackers also on India's defense websites and things like that. So it is a serious challenge. It is not a minor challenge. It does not involve one sector only.
Yeah.
It is multiple sectors. Wherever they can get information, And sometimes initial attack is just a exploratory attack based on the information future attacks are planned.
Which Indian sectors are more at risk, you say? Defense,
So
energy.
this is what I'm trying to sell, that there is no issue of which Indian sector is more at risk. I told you about All India Institute of Medical Sciences. It has nothing to do with country's defense.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, Serum Institute of India or Bharat Biotech have nothing to do with country's defense. These were public, private companies doing sort of, business, vaccine manufacturing uh, in the COVID time. So it has to do with public health.
Hmm.
So the misconception is that Chinese cyber attacks are only on defense institutions. And that is a myth. It is all pervasive attack on your critical infrastructures, on your healthcare, your private industry to steal intellectual property,
Hmm.
to steal information about politicians. It's an all pervasive. So you cannot say that defense is more, you know, vulnerable. So let's leave the healthcare, or let's leave the critical infrastructure, Mumbai power grid, Ladakh power grid. These were examples and warnings to India because Ladakh power grid attack happened after Galwan. So they were giving a message that we can, without sending our bomber aircrafts or missiles, we can actually cripple your economy.
So is India,
So say that one is more vulnerable, so we need to focus on all the networked organizations, whether they are in state sector, central sector, local sector, private sector, public sector.
so is India investing enough in cyber threat intelligence?
uh, yes and no. Yes and no. In November 29, Defense Cyber Agency became operational.
Hmm.
And of course, whatever it does for the national interest. But whether it needs more budgetary allocation, that is still an issue we can discuss about.
I see.
There are other Indian agencies, certain cyber attack
Hmm.
emergency response team, and similar organizations that are working.
Yeah,
I think we need to understand, considered the extent of network organizations,
I see.
if anybody is a risk,
Hmm.
what is the private sector doing? Okay. Is private sector taking this threat seriously enough? Or we are just talking about the government taking? When we say whether India is doing enough,
Hmm.
is it the central government? Is it the state governments? Is it the local governments? Is it hospitals? Is it private companies? You know, so the onus lies on every possible level, that there has to be a awareness, be developing mandated best practices protocol for cybersecurity for the employees, ongoing training, counter malware or counter espionage systems, having for every organization cyber security sort of coordinator that can work on network protection, hardening of the networks, things like that. So there is this NCIIPC,
Hmm.
I think based in Hyderabad. So there are some government agencies. There is also NTRO, National Technical Research Organization.
Hmm.
So I think there is some awareness
Hmm.
whether these need to get more budgetary support.
Yeah.
From my perspective as a geopolitical analyst, I would say that Yes, it's a good thing that we have Defense Cyber Agency. I would like it to be upgraded to a level of a command, a defense command.
Yeah.
So we have some integration of India's, defense forces into theater commands,
Mm.
and the three services, which are Army, Navy, and Air Force, are now working in unison in an integrated theater commands.
Yeah.
But let's not forget other aspects of defense forces, and
Yes.
that do include, you know, Coast Guard, Marine Corps or Marcos.
Mm.
India does need a space command, a cyber defense command.
Mm.
Of course, then you need you have a strategic forces, whether division or command or something like that, or agency.
Mm.
So with the newer threats comes awareness and developing appropriate defense institutional infrastructure.
So, what lesson can India learn from China's Typhoon cyber program?
China is a closed society. It's a communist country, authoritarian country. China did a reform of its armed forces in 2015 and created 5 theater commands. And it is alleged that all these theater commands, they are geographical in nature. The Western Command actually focuses on India, China, or China, Tibet, India land border, and Afghanistan, and all those kind of things. Uh, in Chinese city of Chengdu, there are hackers groups
Mm.
that periodically wage cyber attacks on India and other countries also. So Salt Typhoon was a state-sponsored, possibly hackers group that actually primarily attacked the networks of United States. But from information available in US, almost 12 countries were targeted by this hackers group. It's called Bronze Group or multiple names, whether they are one group or multiple groups, but they are all affiliated with PLA's, uh, integrated commands. And what the Salt Typhoon did that, they use Shadowpad malware to enter into telecommunication networks in United States. So they were successful to the extent that they were able to get into the presidential candidates of 2024, get their IP addresses, get the content of the telephone calls or text messages and things like that, and it created a hue and cry.
I see.
Bottom line is that they have very strong state support, and their level of sophistication is such that these are not like private citizens groups or private ransom groups. These are part of their defense infrastructure
I
who
see.
are systematically targeting countries, organizations from wherever they can get information.
Mm.
Information can be just not, I mean, it can be defense information, but it can be about critical infrastructure, intellectual property, private lives of individuals, all those sort of things. So it's a very sophisticated group or a conglomeration of hackers groups that PLA employs. And the impression in United States is that it is even superior to the Russian hacker groups.
See.
So you need to understand what is the level of sophistication your adversaries are employing.
Mm.
And if you can paralyze electricity grids or hospitals or uh, business entities,
Mm.
you need to be very, very serious. I use the Agni missile failure. I'm not saying that China did that in 2006, but how your weapon systems can be compromised. Very recently, Government of India, I think in the beginning of this month in May, uh, issued some guidelines for surveillance equipment makers, CCTV cameras makers and all,
mm,
that they need to have their products being lab tested in India
mm,
by Ministry of Information and Technology
mm,
before they will be approved. And there was a hue and cry. And of course, private business companies always, they are concerned about bottom line. But government did the right thing and they refused to accede to their request. In India, the CCTV cameras were being imported from China by
yeah, yeah,
various companies.
yeah,
And 23% of them were from 27% of the government companies,
yeah.
whereas 73% were from private sector. So any CCTV camera which is on internet remote controlled, China has access to it. So you will be stupid, you would be foolish as a government that you would not regulate that. But again, India is not a authoritarian country. People immediately go to courts and things like that, and there have been several such cases. And unfortunately, Indian politicians create problems unnecessarily for national security by going to the Supreme Court and wanting the protocols and this and that, and where did you get this and that. But when push comes to shove, the Supreme Court created an SIT, wanted the devices to be given for analysis, the
Mm.
same politician stopped. So you have a muddy environment in a democracy which hampers the defense preparedness. And I think we need to change that attitude.
So can India create a cyber deterrence doctrine to counter such espionage?
I am not very fond of creating doctrines.
Mm,
Doctrines don't mean anything. What means for you is your postures. You can have a written doctrine and people will analyze it threadbare
mm,
and try to find fault. Why not this? Why not that? That is the nature of problem in India, and everything will be, if you try to make a change in doctrine, then people go to the court. What you need is enough budgetary allocations for cyber defense purposes,
mm,
hardening of the institutions, hardening of the procedures in private sector, in any networked organization,
mm,
mandated best practice guideline to be implemented, ongoing continuous training about not necessarily cyber warfare, but cyber security for an organization, using protocols that involve two-factor verification, access to data on need to know basis, each institution having its own protocol. These are small things that can add up at a national level. I would suggest that, government does the allocation for the quote unquote cyber defense agency or NTRO or certain or other big institutions, but private sector also needs to allocate maybe 1% of its budget for cyber security. Because if your intellectual, trade secrets are being compromised by adversaries, you are going to lose in the business environment. So the onus lies on everyone, not just the central government.
So how can India ensure credible deterrence without escalating conflict?
Well, you need to create your own institutions. You don't have to have a direct war
Yeah.
to uh, sort of, prevent these attacks. You need to have, you know, capabilities to deal with ransomware attacks, and you need to harden the, back end systems from where these malwares enter into large networks.
Mm,
And of course, changing the laws is very important. If you are sourcing everything
Yeah.
from China,
Yeah.
in United States, it was found that the solar panels that were imported from China, solar panels
Yeah.
for creating solar energies, had unwanted things installed in the chips that were used to send information to China. Now that's the situation in US. So if that is the situation in US, think about India. You can do business with China, but you have to be very selective what you import from China.
So, how can ordinary Indian citizens and organizations protect themselves in this age of state-sponsored cyber warfare?
Well, you have to be ever vigilant. You
Yeah.
have to be in ever learning mode. You have to be as responsible citizens, as responsible corporate citizens. You have to have your institutional protocols, be aware of cybersecurity. These are simple steps. In US, wherever you go for a job, as part of your initial employee training, there is some ongoing training. There's initial training and then ongoing training, more in government organizations, less in private organization. But there is you know, information on cybersecurity protocols, training on an ongoing basis if you are a law. So you need this kind of, let's say, cyber hygiene, uh, just be aware of this. This has to be done. We have to change our mindset. It's not that the government is spying on everyone. You
Hmm.
need to take responsibility for yourself.
Yeah.
So it is basically a larger sense of cyber awareness at every level of the society, because nobody is immune from these attacks, whether it is defense installations
Hmm.
or critical infrastructure or healthcare or private businesses. Everybody is under attack. And if you are, you know, government cannot monitor all the time what equipment you are buying from China.
Right.
On one hand, you are promoting, capitalism, private enterprise,
Hmm.
but then those businesses have a responsibility also
Yeah.
that the equipment you are purchasing is not compromised.
Right.
Don't complain when government comes out with protocols that there has to be a lab testing or there has to be field visits, audits by IT ministries officials
Hmm.
to check for malwares or undesirable things implanted in the chips. These are technical issues, and
Right.
technical experts are more than competent to protect the nation.
Hmm.
But people, businesses, organizations to have that mindset of cyber awareness, cyber hygiene, or cyber health.
Yeah.
Uh, Again, I am speaking as a generalist. I'm not giving, I cannot because I don't have the skill set to
Yeah.
give that kind of advice. But as a geopolitical analyst, I can just give generalist advice that these are important security issues for the nation and it is not compartmentalized.
So, what reforms are needed in India's data protection and privacy laws?
Uh, there will be some compromise of privacy, you know, because government needs access to communication protocols.
Right.
Governments in US, the US government has backdoor entries to your telephones and your uh, you know, encrypted algorithms,
Yeah.
and under certain circumstances, they can get a subpoena from the courts
Hmm.
to sort of, investigate your devices.
Right.
Now, what is happening currently in US when people are coming back to US from other countries, their devices are being checked.
mm,
Now, you will say that is invasion of the privacy. If US can do that, check private citizen devices, why cannot Indian government do that?
yes.
When India faces terrorism charges, when encrypted applications are used to communicate the terror attacks,
Mm-hmm.
you need to understand that government of India is in a precarious position, and unless the citizens of India do not cooperate and do not make a mountain out of molehill for national security and keep on pointing fingers at government that you're spying on us or whatever, things are not going to change. Some of these malwares are there forever. You know, uh, Advanced Persistent Threat 30, that is a Chinese made malware that was lasting for more than 3, 4 years. So if you have the equipment coming from there and once they have backdoor entries, you have a problem for a long period of time.
So, how should India balance cybersecurity with digital growth initiatives like Digital India?
So whenever you start any initiative, you have to think about the security aspect of it.
Mm,
In US, Department of Veterans Affairs was hacked by China. Okay. In US, a number of serious military installations were hacked by China. If China can do that to US, why China will not do that to India? So I talked about, the Unique Identification Authority of India.
yeah.
Their website was hacked. There were allegations that National Security Council website was hacked. There were allegations that Ministry of External Affairs website was hacked. Now, Government of India usually does not make quote unquote allegations and linking it to China because that creates a diplomatic incident. So sometimes they know where it is coming from. They may not say it,
Mm,
but before taking any digital initiative, you have to think in terms of cyber security, cyber attacks,
mm,
and be totally aware of various angles. Unfortunately, in our zeal for uh, replacing
mhm,
paper system into network system
yeah.
for various government entities, initially we did not pay much heed to issue of cyber breaches, cyber attacks, cyber security.
Yes.
And I think these multiple concerted cyber attacks from China is a wake up call for the government entities,
Mm,
government of India, state governments,
mm,
local governments, even because you have data, you put the data, China will steal it. You know, you digitize all the records,
mm,
China gets access to it. You use Zoom,
mm.
you know, Zoom is a basically Chinese product.
Yeah, I learned that it is bought by some American.
Uh, may have happened, you know, in India, there were some 50 Chinese based apps were banned after
Yeah,
the post-Galwan situation. TikTok was one of them.
yeah.
US struggling with either banning TikTok or changing the ownership of TikTok to a US company.
Mm,
Why? Because ultimately these social platforms are used by Chinese government or its state-sponsored groups,
mm,
hackers groups, or cyber attack teams
mm.
to steal data for nefarious purposes. So you have to be aware of that before you digitize at a rapid pace. I can understand that there is no substitute to digitizing the data,
Yeah.
but you have to have adequate protection And you have to remember that bad guys will not keep quiet. They will use every vulnerability.
Right.
China has found vulnerability in Microsoft email system.
Oh,
Simple things, and Microsoft took long time to, have repair patches for those email vulnerabilities. So you have to learn from other people's examples and make your country safe.
so, friends, as we wrap up, one thing is clear: cyber threats aren't just technical issues; they are national security threats. From policy making to public awareness, India needs a stronger cyber defense framework and strategic foresight to counter these invisible attacks. A big thank you to you, Dr. Adityanjee, for his sharp insights and for highlighting the real face of this digital battlefield. To our
Well,
viewers, if you found value in this discussion, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more bold conversations and deep analysis. Until next time, stay informed, stay secure. Jai Hind.
thank you, Mr. Sinha, for inviting me to Global Focus platform. My parting message to the viewers is that, responsibility lies at every level, not just government level.
Right, sir.
As a private citizen, also you can follow the cyber security protocols in your own personal life. When you share the OTP, when you don't go for, you know, you should not be sharing your OTP with shady individuals because that leads to scams. So there are some vulnerabilities for private citizens also, and unless we change the national mindset
Mm-hmm.
that the will continue to have as a citizen level
Yes.
bad guys putting you in digital arrest or scamming your bank account and things like that. We did not discuss that issue in this podcast,
Yeah.
but I have been saying that it is not just the responsibility of the government of India. And there may be terrorist groups that are stealing money from various bank accounts, and so don't share your OTP or passwords with any Tom, Dick, or Harry.
Yeah.